Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Gerard Pratt, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Commander Andrew Downing. We welcome the members of the National Servicemen's Association of Australia, ACT branch, who are here with us today. This year commemorates the 52nd anniversary of the Second National Service Scheme. The National Service Act of 1964 required males aged 20 years or older to register to serve in the Defence Force for a period of 2 years continuous service, followed by 3 years in the Reserve Forces. In 1965, the Defence Act was amended, and as a result, national servicemen, known as NASHOs, could be sent overseas, and indeed were deployed to Vietnam. Between 1965 and 1972, more than 800,000 men registered for national service. Around 63,000 NASHOs were conscripted, and more than 15,000 served in the Vietnam War. Over 200 were killed and 1,200 wounded. This evening we are honoured to acknowledge Mr Mohammad Shakir Maradi, Chief of Staff of the National Security Advisor, National Security Council, Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, accompanied by Mr Ghulam Abbas Faraso, Chargé d'Affaires, Embassy of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan in Australia. We also welcome Mr John Faunt, President, ACT Branch, National Servicemen's Association of Australia, and Mr Peter Everly, President, ACT Branch, Returned and Services League of Australia. Also joining us this evening are members of the Defence Strategic Studies course, Australian Defence College. Welcome. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony from around Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. I'd invite you all now to please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. If you're able and wish to do so, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved. And here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Gerald Campion. Gerald George Campion was born on the 8th of March 1890 in Minlayton, South Australia, to Joseph and Clara Campion. Gerald was educated at Curramulka Public School and then St Bartholomew's School at Norwood. When his father Joseph died suddenly in March 1902, he returned home to support his mother. By the time the First World War began, he was working as a farm labourer in Curramulka. Gerald Campion enlisted at Oaklands on the 16th of January 1915, following in the footsteps of his brother Willie, who had enlisted on New Year's Eve 1914. The brothers were reunited at the Base Infantry Depot, where after their initial training they were allotted to the 5th Reinforcements to the 10th Battalion. On the 20th of April, the Campion brothers embarked from Outer Harbour, Adelaide, aboard the transport ship Hororata, bound for Egypt. After a brief stop, they were sent to Gallipoli, where they arrived in July. Willie was evacuated to England in September, suffering dysentery. But Gerald Campion remained on Gallipoli until the 10th Battalion was withdrawn in late November, returning to Egypt at the end of December. The brothers were reunited in early March when Willie rejoined the battalion, and towards the end of the month they sailed for France. After a period of orientation in a quieter part of the line near Armentières, on the 23rd of July, the 10th Battalion moved south and took part in its first major battle on the Western Front at Pozières. The battalion suffered heavy casualties, Willie was wounded by shrapnel and again evacuated to England. Gerald saw further action near Marquet Farm before the 10th Battalion was sent to the Ypres sector for a period of rest. In October, the battalion returned to the Somme, where the men endured one of the worst winters in recorded history. Gerald developed mumps in December and was admitted to a hospital in Campiers to recuperate. He returned to the battalion in early February 1917 and took part in the pursuit of the German army as it withdrew to the Hindenburg Line. But in late May, he again reported sick, this time with a fever. He returned to the battalion in early June, but only days later was again evacuated ill. He returned to the battalion in mid-August and reunited with his brother, who had returned in July. In September, the 10th Battalion took part in the battles of Menin Road and Polygon Wood, and in early October was in support of the capture of Broodseinde Ridge. On the 8th of October, the battalion returned to the front line and was tasked to raid Celtic Wood. There was very little time to reorganise the raid, and with the battalion being under strength, men were brought in from other companies to make up the numbers. In the early hours of the 9th of October, the raiding party, led by Lieutenant Frank Scott, attacked Celtic Wood. Though Gerald was not on the raid, his brother Willie was. The raid was a disaster and the Australians suffered heavy casualties. Lieutenant Scott was killed and Willie was listed amongst the missing. Early the next morning, as the 10th Battalion was being relieved, the Australians came under German artillery fire. Gerald was hit in the face and right forearm by shrapnel. He was carried to the 10th Casualty Clearing Station, where he died shortly after. He was laid to rest in the Liesenhoek Military Cemetery. He was 27 years old. The devastation in the Campion household was compounded when a later investigation found that Willie had been killed during the raid on Celtic Wood. He was 25 years old. Gerald Campion's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among more than 60,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice, told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Gerald Gordon Campion, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old as we
that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you all for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.